All right, man, so what we're cooking here is I'm gonna be making some pasta pescata. It's a really delicious dish. Here at La Corte, it's probably our most popular dish. I got some cut up red onions, some cut up asparagus, and a sliced lemon, which we will turn into a juice. So the basis of the dish basically is we have our scallops, we have our shrimp, we have our salmon. That's not necessarily any specific fish you need to use. Pescata means from fish caught, in Italian. So we're just using what I have available. So at home, if you are at home, cooking this dish, you don't need to use scallops, you don't need to use shrimp, you don't need to use salmon. Honestly, you don't even need to use onions and asparagus. The whole point of cooking is being creative, doing whatever the hell you want. This is your dish. You're the chef of your own kitchen, and just make something tasty. This is just how I do it. And then I just happen to have onions, asparagus, lemon, and these seafood available. I like blackened seasoning because personally I like a little spice in my food. And then here we have our olive oil, which if you don't use olive oil, well, you know what, just stop cooking. And then today we're gonna use dry pasta because in the house, I know normally, I don't know you, but if you have dry pasta, it's very common, but I don't expect everyone to make their own fresh pasta every day, which I do, and it takes a long time, but it's absolutely delicious. So be at home, be comfortable, be easy. I like the red onion asparagus mix because you're getting a little bit of bitterness, you're getting a little bit of acid to all this fish, which tend to be a little salty. So you're kind of really blending in the flavors, and the blackening is giving it more of that spiciness. And then, we're obviously going to be adding butter and a little bit of cheese. So you have that little bit of savory, a little bit of acid, a little bit of salt, a little bit of spice, like that umami flavor, which is the most, once again, douchey thing to say when it talks about cooking. But, that's how it works. So first what you're going to start in the pan, you're going to start sauteing these onions along with the asparagus. You want to sweat them down, because what happens is when you sweat down any ingredient, you're releasing the moisture in the pan, and by releasing that moisture, you're intensifying the flavor of whatever you're using. So if you're cooking down an onion, you're only going to intensify the flavor of this onion. You're getting rid of that raw bitterness and just making it a more delicious flavor. Along with the asparagus, then we're going to throw in our seafood with blackened seasoning, get all those flavors combined, all tightened up. And then we're gonna, a little more olive oil, then we'll use a little bit of chicken stock. So I make all my own stocks, my own soups, everything from scratch. But at home, you can typically just use water. Just pasta water is fine. You don't need a stock. And if you want, you can actually go out and buy those little bases. They sell like, pre-made chicken stock base or whatever it may be. So sweat all those ingredients in, add the stock, add your pasta, and I cannot express this enough. Do not cook your pasta fully through. It is awful when people fully cook a pasta. Pasta has to be served al dente. Al dente means, it's still got a bite to it. Not al dente. Al dente was a painter that died hundreds of years ago. Al dente, all right? So cook the pasta to a nice al dente. You want to cook it about 50%, 60% of the way in the water. You take it out of the pan, you're gonna throw it in, the pot, you're gonna throw it into the pan, and you finish the cooking process in the pan because that's gonna emulsify the pasta with all the sauces and combine all those flavors. Because the worst thing in the world is when and a lot of people do at home is they make a pasta and then they make a sauce. And then they put the pasta in a bowl and they put the sauce on top. And then you eat your pasta, and at the end of your pasta dish, you have all this sauce at the bottom. So if you've ever been to an Olive Garden, which is basically the Applebee's of, Italian cooking, every time you're done eating, they give you those endless breadsticks so you can mop up all that sauce. Well, if you're correctly cooking pasta, you shouldn't really have any sauce at the bottom of the bowl because it's all together, and every bite should have that flavor. So I say we just get in the kitchen and start cooking this up. It's a real quick process. The longest thing takes is just the pasta and the water. So. Now we're in the kitchen. We're making our world famous pasta pescata. Very simple. We're getting this hot, nice saute pan, nice and hot. I already put the pasta in the water. We're about 5-6 minutes in the water, so we're just about there. Have enough time to make the sauce in the pan. So we're gonna first start out with the beautiful, lovely Guest Star olive oil. All right. And how you tell if the pan is hot? You're gonna see these little ripples in the pan. And you gotta make sure the oil is nice and hot, the pan's nice and hot, because if you start with a cold pan, you're not gonna get any caramelization effect, and you're basically just gonna slow cook something, which that's not what you want. All right, we're gonna start off with our onions and our asparagus. Get those in the pan. And like remember we talked about, you really wanna sweat out the moisture and really intensify the flavors of those ingredients. So we're gonna let this kind of cook for a few minutes. And like I said, you don't have to use onions, you don't have to use asparagus. This is just the dish that we do on our menu. Well, you can use any kind of veggies that you like. You don't even have to use veggies. You can use meat, you can use chorizos, or you can just do fish, or you know, whatever you like, you know? We got about 50%. You can see the color starting to change in the onions, the brightness starting to come out in the asparagus. Now we can start adding our fish. First, I like to add the shrimp. And shrimp cooks really fast, so don't worry about it being undercooked or how long you gotta keep in the pan, because it's gonna finish in the process when you start sauteing everything together. And once you have everything, you can look at shrimp and it's basically cooked. So we'll throw about 3 shrimp in there. Throw in our scallops. These are U10s, so they're nice and chunky, nice and big. Diver scallops. Just break those in half in the pan. Keep everything sauteing, keep everything moving. You want to keep even cooking on the dish. Let's throw in our salmon. Doesn't have to be salmon, it could be any kind of fish you like. All right, keep it sauteing. And now we're going to throw in our blackened seasoning. A little bit of salt and pepper. Once it starts sticking to the bottom of the pan, that's actually a good sign, because then you're getting the caramelization, you're getting those sooks built up on the frying pan and all that flavor. So we're going to deglaze that, try to bring up some of those flavors, a little bit of white wine, kind of pull those flavors up. Now check our pasta. See, we're just about there. We're about 75% of the way cooked, al dente. So let's add a little bit of pasta water, so we're not throwing our pasta in and burning the pasta. Like I said, you don't have to use chicken stock, so for all purpose sakes, I'm using water today to show you can still get the same effect. All right, now let's add our pasta. Get the excess water out of there, but it doesn't have to be dry. Don't worry about straining your pasta first. It's not necessary. You want that pasta water, you want that salty, starchy water, because that's actually gonna help bind your sauce. See, without even adding any butter or adding anything, the pasta's already starting to get creamy, naturally. You see here all the ingredients. Now we're gonna add a little bit of butter, which typically with a seafood or dry pasta, I don't like using butter, I like using olive oil. But Americans, the way our culture is, you know, developed with flavor, people like things creamy, and it's freaking delicious. So break the rules. If you want to use a little butter, if you want to add a little cheese, do whatever the hell you want. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't add something to a dish because, oh, it's not traditional. Well, you're not traditional. All right, so now we're gonna add a little bit of mascarpone cheese. That added creaminess. You see that pasta starting to get nice and creamy? You don't want to overcook the sauce, because now the pasta is binding to the sauce and everything's coming together. And you want that creamy, you want that slapping. You got to hear that, you know? You want to hear that slapping. That means the pasta is emulsified. So now in the finished process, we're going to add our little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of finishing olive oil. And then right before we plate it, because you don't want to lose the freshness of the herb, you don't want to cook the herb, we're going to add a little bit of parsley, which is optional. A little freshness to the dish. We're going to turn off our heat. And now we got a pasta biscotta. And if the sauce is too tight, add a little pasta water, and there you go. That's it.
I don't need you to tell me how fucking good my coffee is, okay? I'm the one who buys it.
Now we got the finished product here, the pasta biscotta, nice and creamy, nice. The sauce is nice and tight. See that? Put it in the bowl. Don't overcomplicate your plating. If it's too precise, it's too man-made. Make it natural. Let everything just go into the bowl. You know, you can do a little circle with the food and the shrimp and the scallops. But don't go crazy with all these freaking plating forks and stuff. I mean, you're cooking this at home. This is exactly how I plate it in the restaurant. It still looks delicious. Just drop that on the floor. Hopefully it doesn't hit anybody. All right. Wipe up the rim a little bit. If you want to put a little blackened season on top, a little bit on the rim to be a jerk. And then a little olive oil on top for a nice little shine. And that's all you need. A beautiful pasta biscotta, tasty flavors, mascarpone for a little bit of tartness with the lemon. They'll eat it, it's delicious. Cook it at home, change up the recipe, do it your own way. Just use my guidance or don't use my guidance. Come into my restaurant, you can buy it. whatever you want to do. This is your thing. Just keep it simple, keep your cooking simple, keep it delicious, keep it savory, and just make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and that's it.